I read a post the other day that stopped me cold. Not the article itself, but a reflection from a friend who shared it. She posed a quiet, pointed question alongside it. Why is it so hard to be honest? The article was written by a man she clearly admires, someone I don't know. He was writing about the tension of being both a gay man and a person of faith, about the years spent trying to reconcile two parts of himself that religion told him were incompatible. His voice was calm, clear. He wasn't defending anything, just telling the truth as he has come to know it, standing in the space between love and doctrine, certainty and grace. But what struck me most wasn't the article, it was what happened around it. I made the mistake of reading the comments. Some were kind, others cautious. And then there were the ones cloaked in scriptural concern, soft in tone, sharp in implication. That familiar blend of just speaking the truth in love, which usually means you've gone too far. That's when my friend's question hit me again. Why is it so hard to be honest? Because honesty is unpredictable, because it threatens categories, because once something vulnerable is named, it invites response. Opinions, corrections, concern, even silence can speak volumes. And we learn quickly what kinds of honesty are welcome and what kinds are not. My response had nothing to do with the man who wrote the article. I don't know him, but I know the pattern. A person speaks the truth of who they are, and the atmosphere shifts. What could have been a moment of shared humanity becomes a referendum on whether that truth is acceptable. That thread stirred something in me, a familiar ache, one I've carried for years. It reminded me why I've always struggled with organized religion. Not because I reject faith, but because I believe in it too deeply to accept what so many institutions have done with it. I grew up in a religious household. Church wasn't forced. It was just there, woven into weekends, woven into language, woven into me. We prayed, we believed in God, in being good, in being kind. It wasn't fire and brimstone. No one shouted from pulpits or threatened hell. It was quieter than that, a kind of spiritual osmosis, belief by absorption. Not questioned, just lived. And for a long time, I didn't think to challenge it. In many ways, it gave me meaning, ritual, rhythm, reverence, a sense that life was held by something larger. I learned how to be thoughtful and agreeable, how to suppress the parts of me that didn't fit the frame. But I wouldn't have called it a conflict, not then. The edges didn't show up until later, late teens, early 20s, the years when the mirror sharpens. When the language you grew up with starts to sound foreign inside your own body, you hear a familiar phrase from a pastor, a friend, and something inside you bristles. Not in defiance, in recognition. This no longer feels true. That's when the cracks started. Small, subtle, but steady. I'd sit in services and feel the distance grow, between the words being spoken and the truth I felt in my gut. I'd hear talk of love, grace, belonging, but only for those who believe the right things. Loved the right people, lived the right way. The God I was raised with hadn't changed, but I had. And the deeper I went into myself, the more I realized how much of me had been shaped by expectations I never consciously agreed to. There's grief in that, not because I want to go back, but because I remember what I hoped religion could be. I still do. But I've started to see that the structures meant to bring people closer to God often do the opposite. They protect belief at the cost of honesty. They manage behavior instead of making space for mystery. That's where the conflict lives for me, not in a rejection of faith, but in a longing for something real. It's a strange thing watching something meant to offer hope become a source of fear. Not the fire and brimstone kind, the quieter kind. The kind that makes you rehearse your questions before you ask them, if you ask them at all. The kind that teaches you to doubt your own clarity. It happens slowly, almost invisibly. Religion becomes a performance. You're welcome, but only if you play by the rules. You don't have to believe everything, you just have to act like you do. Keep your doubts quiet. Keep your grief tidy. Keep your identity within the lines. Over time, I started to see the shape of it. A culture built on the fear of being wrong, not just theologically, existentially. An unspoken belief that if we loosen our grip even a little, the whole thing might fall apart. So everything gets guarded, protected, sanitized, even the sacred. What that produces is surface-level connection. People saying they're fine when they're not. People nodding in agreement while something inside them pulls away. people performing belief instead of embodying it, and eventually people leaving. Not because they've lost faith, but because they can't practice it honestly within the system that claims to hold it. You hear it all the time: they left because they came out. They left because they got divorced. They left because their questions made others uncomfortable. But often they didn't just leave. They wrestled, they grieved, they carried shame alongside their theology, not just for disagreeing, for disappointing, not just wrong, unworthy. That's where the system fails. It fails when it treats difference as danger, when it treats doubt as weakness, when it asks people to choose between honesty and acceptance. And it fails most when it forgets that real faith isn't afraid of questions. It makes room for them. The man who wrote that article, he wasn't angry. He wasn't tearing anything down. He was simply telling the truth. And still it drew responses. Not because what he said was wrong, but because it made people uncomfortable. It threatened the illusion of certainty. And that's the irony. Organized religion speaks of love, but so much of it is shaped by fear. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear of letting people think for themselves. Fear that if we let go of control, the truth might not hold. But truth doesn't need protection. People do. And when we build systems that silence those who speak honestly, we don't just fail them, we fail ourselves. We lose the chance to grow, to question, to become more human, and maybe more holy too. I don't long to go back. Not to church, not to the language or the structures I was raised in. I don't miss the songs. I don't miss the certainty. I'm not searching for a way to return. But I'm not angry. I never was. If anything, I was confused. And under that, maybe a little sad. Sad that something meant to be expansive could feel so narrow. Sad that faith, something that should invite deeper presence, so often felt like something I had to perform. What I feel now is clearer, not resolved, but less tangled. I no longer expect the places I came from to be the places I grow in. And I've stopped trying to make meaning fit into neat containers. Still, I listen. To sermons, to scientists, to poets, to people of all faiths and no faith at all. I'm drawn to questions more than answers, to metaphors more than doctrine. Something in me still leans toward meaning, just not the kind that needs to be defended. I don't dismiss religion. I see the threads of wisdom in all of it. I just don't grant exclusive authority to any one system. I find the sacred in places that aren't labeled, in a passing thought, in a piece of writing, in a question that lingers. The grief I carry isn't about leaving, it's about the silence around the leaving. The way so many walk away quietly, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for something more honest than what they were handed. There's sadness in that, but there's hope too, in the spaces that are opening, in the conversations that no longer require permission, in the ones telling the truth without needing it to be tidy. What draws me now isn't belief, it's integrity, not certainty. Presence, the willingness to stay curious even when things don't resolve. That might not be what I was taught to call faith, but it feels real, and real is enough. What I'm learning to trust is quieter than anything I grew up with. It doesn't speak in absolutes. It doesn't ask me to perform. It doesn't need a name. I'm learning to trust what feels honest in my body. The stillness that arrives when something true is spoken aloud. The clarity that comes when I stop trying to explain myself. The peace of not needing to prove anything to anyone, not even to myself. I'm learning to trust the questions that don't go away. The ones I've carried for years. Not because I want answers, but because holding them has made me who I am. Because they remind me that wonder isn't a problem to be solved. I'm learning to trust presence over performance. Not showing up as someone who has it figured out, but as someone willing to stay awake to what's here, to what's unfolding, to what's asking to be seen. And maybe most of all, I'm learning to trust that the sacred was never meant to be managed, that whatever is real, whatever connects us, moves us, holds us, doesn't require a title, doesn't need a system, just attention. This isn't a call to tear anything down. It's not a sermon. It's not a manifesto. It's not an answer. It's just where I've landed. For now, a place of quiet clarity, a refusal to perform certainty, a slow return to what I feel, what I think, what I believe without asking for permission. What I'm learning maybe more than anything is how to unlearn, to notice the inherited scripts, to pause before repeating them, to stop asking systems to validate what I already know. That's the heart of it. Not arriving at new beliefs, but letting go of the need for belief to be approved. Not rejecting what I was given, just gently releasing what no longer fits. Trusting my own discomfort as a kind of wisdom. Staying with the tension instead of trying to fix it. That's what I mean by freedom. Not walking away angry, but walking away aware. No longer outsourcing meaning. No longer translating myself. And if all that leads to is more honesty, more presence, more room to be, I think that's enough. Actually, I think it's everything. Like what you heard, then subscribe to this channel. You can also find me at justbreathe.ghost.io. Mindfulness reminds us to question everything, because you never know what script you might be running. Always remember to just breathe.